I recently reviewed the Elegoo Jupiter SE on this channel, and during that review I noticed that my wash and cure station was simply insufficient to handle a print roughly a foot in size. You'd have to put it inside the wash station, wash it, pull it back out, flip it over, drop it back in and wash it again. Curing it was a nightmare. All sorts of problems trying to get it to fit under the hood, and then as it rotated it fell over. A real pain. So I wanted to find something that would handle a print that large and be able to do it in one shot. I'm Ron Burke, editor-in-chief for Gamingtrend.com. Today we're going to unbox the Elegoo Mercury XS, a combined wash and cure station. Let's unbox this thing and wash and cure some stuff. Now that everything's out of the plastic, let's take a closer look at what all of these items are. Let's start with the wash station. So the first thing that I noticed is that we have two baskets. You have this small basket here, and obviously the large basket that you probably expected. Why would you have two of them? Well, you'll notice that that kind of drops in there and leaves a whole section in the center open. What that's for is if you have some specific Elegoo plates, specifically for the Saturn, Saturn S, and Mars 2 Pro, and your print is, and I wanted to make sure I got this right, 180 millimeters by 121 millimeters by 153 millimeters. You can take the entire plate and put it right inside and it'll sit on top of that cage. You can wash your print without ever removing it from the plate. I'm not sure how many times I would do that, but it is an option. I personally prefer to pop mine off of a plate, and I typically use a flex plate to do that, but just the same, it is an option to take the entire plate, set it in there, wash it, pull it back out, and there you go. If you're not using this, then obviously the whole basket drops in there, and then you have the maximum build volume, which is 200 millimeters by 260 millimeters. So not quite large enough for the 300 millimeter size of the Jupiter SE, but literally any other printer that Elegoo makes and most everybody else will fit just fine in there without a problem. There is a second feature that I noticed pretty much out of the gate, and of strange things, it's actually the power connector. You'll notice that there are two whips coming off the power connector, and that is because you can power both of these devices off of this one plug. So both of them use a Canon plug here in the back, and you can plug in both simultaneously and run them off of a single power plug, which is nice, especially when you have multiple printers. You're not devoting a bunch of brick space to multiple stations. The lid is slightly different than the ones I've seen from other manufacturers. Instead of having just two connections or small connections, this has four connections, and they're the full width of the cage itself. So that's very secure. That's not going anywhere. It goes on top, and there's a small recession inside the tray here. So that's staying put. This does use a magnetic impeller. I have not actually seen anything other than magnetic impellers in quite some time, but you can feel it when you pick this up. There's actually a bit of resistance. But what it does is there's a small spinning magnet here, and that spins the impeller inside this, and that way there's no contact points to worry about. You can pull it right off and there's no mess. Moving over to the curing station, first thing I'm gonna do, well, you can see I've only had this out of the box for a couple of seconds and I've already got a handprint on it. So I'm gonna buy some peel and stick handles to stick on the side of this. I will leave a description link for you to pick up the ones that I use. Really, any of them will work, but I do recommend that, especially when you've got gloves and everything else, to be able to just have to clean one portion of the surface. So we'll remove that and set it aside. You can see that there's no overhead sort of piece like this that would get in the way or knock things over, and that's because it uses these light towers. So it's still going to use an LED array that you can see here, and there's a little bit of a like a prismatic reflector on some of these, so it can spread the wavelength. But these are 36 watts, and they're going to mount right here, like so, and they're going to provide light all the way around as the object spins around on the plate. This is removable. I do hope that Elegoo starts selling these because I've certainly messed up my other one. So it'd be nice to be able to get these. I know folks who have printed these in clear resin. I mean, that's really truly using your printer to feed itself. But just the same, underneath that, you can see there's another array of lights here, and those lights are going to shine upwards and cure the bottom of your print. So keep that in mind when you place your object. You might want to set it to the edge, not to the center, because that's going to allow it to move all the way around, and it's going to hit that and cure all of the bottom. There is one other challenge though when you're printing hollow prints, and I'm actually kind of excited because this is saving me the trouble of building one. Included in the box and plugging directly into the side here is a UV light. So this light can go inside of your object and print it, or I'm sorry, cure it from the inside. Getting a proper wavelength LED that's strong enough is a challenge. You can build them, but then you run into, did I get the right wavelength? You need some soldering skills. I mean, it turns into a big pain. This is included in the box. So you can throw this inside your object and let it cure from the inside. You simply hit this switch, let the light go in, leave it there for a while. You're gonna cure for about 2 minutes on this plate. Any longer than that, you're risking things getting brittle. Obviously, there's ways that may or may not work for you. You might need a little bit longer for something that is particularly a certain resin type. But for the most part, 2 minutes will do it. This, we'll see. Throwing that inside an object, if it's bright enough, you might be able to cure like inside some wings or inside the head of something like that. Being able to get it up in there and leave it for a while. We'll have to see how fast this cures. I have some handheld ones that are basically like a small baton, and I'll be able to compare it to this to see how they work. The other nice thing that they included, if you have an object that is tall, and I should say taller than this, what do? Well, you can still cure it. That's where these come in. So they've included some glasses to keep you safe. They are not fashionable, but they're not meant to be. So you can leave the top hood off, cure the object while it's sitting there, and have these on so you can keep an eye on it, and then be able to pull these off, have your thing cured. You might end up in a situation, if you end up printing something large like this, that you'll have to print it and cure it one way and then cure it the other way, and the same thing for washing it. You may end up having to do that. Just depends on the size of the thing, or if you're printing in pieces or one large piece. But either way, let's go ahead and get this assembled, and we'll get a final look at what all these things look like when they're ready to go. A quick note on assembly, there is a left and right to these. You'll notice that this has one connector and this one has two. When you pull these wires out, it's pretty easy to figure out. This one has 2 wire connectors, this one has 1. React accordingly. That's everything all assembled and ready to go. Let's print some stuff, give it a wash, give it a cure, see how things turn out. I think it would be unfair not to compare. So this is the bucket for the Anycubic. You can see that it goes all the way up to 850 milliliters. That said, I very rarely ever used 850, I'm usually down here at 7, which is the max that they recommend over here, 7,000 milliliters. So that's gonna handle pretty much anything you wanna put in here, but it is slightly more narrow than its competitor. So this bottom part is a little more narrow. I don't know why they went with 2 different heights. There's probably a way to do that with the cage that didn't require the bucket be smaller. I don't know how much that's going to be a factor with larger prints, but I just did want you to see the differences between these two. I do like the larger latch system on the Elegoo system. They have the double latch over here for Anycubic. They have the double latch over here for Elegoo. Double latch on this side for Elegoo. Single latch over here. I have accidentally picked this up, popped a latch. The longer you use these, the more weak they get. It's nice to at least have 2. That way, I mean, there's at least twice as much of an opportunity to not get splashed when you can make sure that it's actually locked in place. These use the same sort of magnetic system. So you notice there's no like impeller exposed here. It's a similar situation over there, but you have to remove that small spinner plate. It's the same sort of spinner plate that's over here in the cure station, but in this way, you're not having to do that. You don't have to remove that piece. By having it as a separate station, there's no exposed pieces, and this is simply fill, place, and get to work. So pros and cons to all of it. I did want to point out that I have this now plugged in, so I can use this to cure. When I'm running this, I can put it inside something. There is no sort of cutout here for this to happen while it's inside there. So I think the intention is that you use this when it's outside, when your print is outside. Just the same, it'd be very easy to cut a notch in there if you really wanted that to be up in there while it's curing. It's not like there's generating any heat, so there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But it's a nice add-on. It saves you the trouble of having to make one of these and trying to find the right wavelength and the right strength. I've managed to find the right wavelength, but very rarely the right strength for the lights on this, so this is a good include. We're going to load up the wash station with some isopropyl alcohol. I use 99% pure IPA, and I'm not going to be printing very large to start, so we're only going to fill it about halfway. A little bit of dripping you see there, that's why you put a mat underneath everything while you work, because resin printing can be messy. All right, halfway filled, let's grab our print. Now, this was printed in a kind of semi-clear resin, but realistically, unless you're going to leave it this color, this doesn't actually matter, because you're going to primer this and then all the detail will be added with paint. This is printed hollow, so we're going to get to see one of the other functions of this particular setup, which is this pen that can go inside and clear things up. But to begin with, we're going to get this thing submerged and onto the station. I'm going to move things a little bit closer here. We'll get the lid on top. We'll get things clamped down. I personally like to clamp these because accidents happen. We're going to wash this for about 2 minutes. This goes up in 30-second increments. Press the button, and off it goes. At the halfway mark, you'll see that everything slows down and then starts again. The turbidity of the IPA keeps everything moving around. The idea is that it's going to pull the small bits of layers of resin off the surface and clean the print so it's no longer wet with resin. It's still not safe to handle. You're still going to want to use gloves, and that's where the cure station comes in that we're going to touch on next. That's me bringing up the cure station, because we'll be done here in just a moment. Everything's done. You can go ahead and open this up. Wow, those are really on there. All right. Lift the basket, and our print is ready to go. We're going to go ahead and drain out of it the remaining resin, which, because it's semi-transparent, you can actually see it draining out, which is kind of cool. And we're actually going to let this sit for probably an hour or so and let this dry off. I personally don't like to cure my resin right out of the cleaner. I like to let it completely dry and then I can hit it with the UV rays, and I'm not having any problems with dripping or draining. All right, so it's been about an hour, and you can see that she's now completely dry. There are still some little things to clean up here, like this little bit of supports, but we'll get that in post when we're done with our curing. So I'm gonna remove the lid here, set that aside, and we're gonna place her directly on the plate here. This is where this can kind of come in. This is that UV that we were talking about. I'll kind of give you a look here without blinding you. That's pretty bright. There's no doubt that that's gonna work. She does have this hole here. We can use that inside. It's still a little bit too small, but wouldn't take much to hollow that out a little further and get that inside. Or if you're concerned about a specific spot, you can hit it with this for a minute or so and let it do the work. But for now, we're just gonna go with a simple cure. There is a right way and wrong way to put this on. This little sticker goes to the back. Do I know why? Not particularly. I will be adding handles. I'm just gonna check over here, see how I can buy these right here. I'll give a link to them in my Amazon list and show you guys where you can pick those up. They're nice and cheap, but it allows you to not have your fingerprints all over this. We're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna cure this for about 2 minutes. You don't wanna cure for too long because then it'll become brittle. So let's let that get to work. You'll see that she'll slowly rotate around. Some wash and cure stations rotate around like it's a trip to the circus. This one is nice and slow, making sure that you get a very even cure all the way across the model. And as I mentioned earlier, it has this light here to get underneath it, make sure that you're getting good even coverage underneath. Got that all sealed up for our next print. She does have a base that I can print to put her on. I may or may not do that for this particular review, but for display purposes, yeah, there is a nice little display piece that you can set her on to keep her stable. Kind of liking that eerie, transparent, semi-Pepper's Ghost type transparency on Medusa here. It gives her a very weird, otherworldly look. Because she's resin printed, I really don't have to stick to that size. If I wanted, I could print her far larger than that. And the level of detail on this model, as you'll see when we do close-ups, is fairly significant. So we do have a little bit of room to work with to bring up her overall size without ruining her overall detail. All done. Again, I don't want to put my hands on this, so this will have handles very soon. Medusa here is all cured and ready. So the next step is to primer her to bring out all of this incredible detail. But first, let's get a much closer look. Fresh out of the curing station, you can see that she is all cured and ready for any sort of primer or anything else we'd like to do to her. I haven't cleaned her up yet, so obviously the teeth are still kind of janky on the snake, and she's got some bits that need to be cleaned up on her, but this is printed with no adjustments whatsoever to the defaults, using what I can only affectionately call crap resin. I didn't even use Elegoo resin, so this isn't like matched resin. This is the cheapest resin you can buy. I don't want to embarrass any particular manufacturer, but as good as this is, it only gets better from here. So let's clean her up and get her primered. Before we primer, I do want to offer one other bit of advice. I highly recommend that you jump on Amazon and grab a syringe like this. So this will allow me to get into all sorts of places that might be difficult for a wash and cure station. That little spike can go in where plenty of things can't. And this large of a gauge, I can push a great amount of pressure into the device or into the object and flush it out. So I highly encourage that you pick up something like this. They're dirt cheap, and you can use them for quite a while before you need to throw them away. They're plastic, so you can just cure these too. You don't really have to worry about it getting resin on it like you would something else. And when it's too gross, leave it in the sun, throw it away, grab a new one. So that just about wraps things up for the Elegoo Mercury XS bundle. Now this wash and cure station has a great many things that we appreciated and only a handful of things that we didn't. The most obvious being, when you separate out two devices, well, that's obviously twice as much space. But we also liked the fact that that allowed us to wash and cure multiple things at the same time. If you happen to have multiple printers going at the same time, well, this can help your workflow. If you're a single wash and cure station and a single printer, well, maybe combining them might be your thing. Your workflow may be different than mine. We really appreciated the fact that it works great for things like this Porg, this Medusa bust, or even this Witch dice tower. But we had a lot of trouble with larger prints like Princess Zelda. Even though she's one large piece here and then multiple small pieces, we could still make it work for her because we could put her in this way and then this way, and the only trouble was this part of the dress that kind of sticks out. Minthara here from Baldur's Gate 3, that was a whole different challenge. Because of her stance and the mace, it made it very difficult to get the legs down into the wash cure station and not take a risk of breaking any pieces on her when the turbidity of the water, or the resin turbidity of the IPA began to move the print around. So there's some prints that are larger that are going to be a challenge for this wash and cure bundle. It also highlights that there still is a need for a larger wash and cure station. When you have things like the Jupiter LE, well, that's going to print things like this in a single shot. Now I've got to be able to wash and cure that in a single shot. This is still a little tall for the Mercury's height of the cure station, and it's just too tall for washing it in one shot either. So maybe that's a thing, or maybe that's just the breaks and I should start printing these things in smaller pieces. If you do happen to print her in smaller pieces, well then that's easy. You can just throw those in the basket, wash, cure, done, and then you got to deal with assembly. If you want to do it all at once, well, that's a different problem. I did appreciate the included pen. Now that pen plugs into the device on the cure side, and that allowed me to cure inside like this Porg. The last thing I need is this cute little guy exploding or splitting because there's uncured resin inside. Same thing with Zelda, she's actually hollow on the inside, and being able to print a piece this large and then be able to cure all the way up into the head and down into the arms with that piece, that's fantastic. Now you can build these things yourself. Radio Shack may have closed a long time ago, but Amazon still exists and other parts stores will let you find pieces that you can put together your own sort of cure pen. The challenge becomes, can you get one that's 405 nanometers in width, and can you also get one that's bright enough to be able to cure inside a device like this without having 10 hours of print time or 10 hours of cure time, and then you really don't know if you're actually done. The one that's included on the Mercury XS is plenty bright, and it's the correct wavelength. So I know that anything that I put it in, it's going to come out cured, and I had no problems with anything that I tested that on. Just like every other wash and cure station, I would still recommend that you use some sort of handle system so you can keep your fingers off of the plastic. Once you get resin on those, it's very difficult to clean. So I will leave some items in the description down below that will show you where I get the handles that I use. I didn't use them during the review because I want you to see what ships in the box. But I still recommend that you use those. It's going to keep your fingerprints off of there, and most importantly, it's going to keep resin off of things. Not only that, but I can pop those off, swap them out, and I don't have to worry about cleaning those should there be damage or should I end up with resin on there that I can't get off. So the last question is about price. Now at the time of writing, the MSRP on the Mercury XS is $250, but there are sales all the time. Pretty much anytime that there's any sort of major event, like an eclipse or any major holiday, you can pick it up for some sort of discount. Right now, at the time of writing, it's $200. So if you're patient, you can pick it up pretty cheap. There are even sales on the printers and the resin. So just be patient and you'll be able to get yourself a pretty good deal. Now, I like pretty much everything there is to like about this printer, 3, 2, 1, fourth part. The last question is price. Now, at the time of writing, the MSRP is $250 for the Mercury XS. But just about every major holiday and, I don't know, maybe an eclipse, you'll find some sort of sale. So currently, the device can be had for $200. So if you're patient, you can usually pick up not only the printers and the resin, but also this wash and cure station at a pretty solid discount. Now, I like just about everything there is to like about this wash and cure station, but as Skilo once said, I just wish it was a little bit taller. I'm Ron Burke, editor-in-chief for Gamingtrend.com. Thank you for watching. Let us know down in the comments. Are you a 3D printer? Are you looking to get into this? What else would you like to see from us at Gamingtrend around 3D printing? Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you again very soon.